Good evening, and welcome to this very first episode of FEAT Talks this year, 2026. And our first speaker, it gives me great honour and great pleasure to introduce Linda BIRR. Linda is a lifelong vegan who has been plant-based her entire adult life. Following careers as an educator and business change consultant, she dedicates her efforts to animal rights advocacy. As part of the team behind the campaign to ban animal testing and research in the UK and the Alliance for Cruelty Free Science, she works alongside Dr Andre Menache, the Greenhill Vet, as his researcher. Together, they focus on challenging government bodies and regulators across the UK and the EU in particular. As a community journalist, she got the government to acknowledge for the first time ever under freedom of information that the process of animal testing has never been scientifically validated. Her most recent work is a report of the failings of the management of farmed salmon by DEFRA, and the report was discussed in the Scottish Parliament in February 2026. Her latest work is the transparency gap, which shows the government how to make reporting on animals in science more transparent and open without breaking the Data Protection Act. Without further ado, I give you Linda.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to discuss the transparency gap report and the brief to implement it. And I'll provide my full notes on our campaign page, and I will give them to Alan to host on the FEAT campaign page too. I'll stop at intervals so you can ask a couple of questions with time for questions throughout. And I'm going to explain exactly what this transparency problem is, why it persists, and how it can be fixed. But I think I want to start by saying to you, I think that if something is this secret and it allows such extremes of experiments, you have to ask what actual benefits are accruing here over decades. I think that's a really important question. And it's a question I asked my new MP, who is the MBR Acres MP. And I have to say, he's been on board from the beginning. And lots of the questions that he asks in the Parliament written question sections are coming from people like me and others who live in his constituency. And I think that's really important to have an MP on board who lives in this particular constituency. I think given how much attention is given to the dogs and their plight, I think it's for the first time, I would say, in the time that I have lived here, and I've lived here for over 40 years, this is the first time somebody has actually expressed sympathy and empathy and is an MP. That's a terrific start. So let's just have a look at this extreme secrecy. It can enable practices that might not withstand public or independent scrutiny. It raises legitimate doubts about the claimed benefits that justify the costs in animal suffering, scientific reliability, and public trust. So what's the problem? I can't go back to 1947 and the Nuremberg Code, or 1957 and the 3 Rs, or even 1965 with the Littlewood recommendations. But if at some stage you want me to do some work on that and pop it up as posts or even do a short video about it, I can explain that that's where this all started from. It's from those 3 key things, from 1947, the Nuremberg Code, from the 1957 3 Rs as a theory in a book, but applied all across the law that we use today, and the 1965 Littlewood recommendations, which were never implemented and would have changed the plight of all the animals forever. So I will start with the ASPA, that's the Animals and Scientific Procedures Act. This was enacted in law in 1986 by Margaret Thatcher's government. Well, it would be, wouldn't it? And I'm glad this is being recorded. I'm quite happy to say that. And amended in 2013 to add in the EU directive, which changed significantly a number of key things. One of the world's most detailed frameworks for regulating animal experiments. That it truly is a world leader in that. It actually details that. Unbelievably, it mandates records across every stage of an animal's life in science, from breeding, acquisition, through health monitoring. Seriously, they include that, and daily care, to actual procedures, the severity experienced, rehoming or killing. And rehoming can include sending the animal to a slaughterhouse, that's counted as rehoming, training of staff, and the compliance in statistical monitoring and non-compliance monitoring. So you can see that it's a comprehensive act, but you can't see. And you can't see because public access is severely limited. Fully reported, almost nothing. Partially reported, very minimal. That's the non-technical summaries and also the retrospective assessments. And they're ones where work is carried out and they apply for the license afterwards. Believe it or not, that still goes on. People get all this funding and they can't even organise themselves to get the project licenses in place before they start. And then undisclosed. That's protected by the perception and deployment of the function of Section 24, the secrecy clause or confidentiality. This was inserted just before the Act was enacted by the House of Lords, and that will be a significant piece of information that I will come back to because they're complaining about it now. Parliament made the ASPA amendment, which came into force in 2013. These regulations amended Section 20 to create specific statutory duties to publish non-technical summaries. They had to do this in the UK because the EU directed them to. It carved out one narrow category as a concession here in the UK for mandatory public release, while leaving Section 24 untouched. So without visibility, the system is effectively self-policing. Now, for those of us who have recently watched the water company's TV thing, The Dirty Business, this is called operator self-policing. This applies to animals and science too. Aggregated, hiding poor practice, and MPs and the public can't scrutinise, exactly the same as the water companies. Now, laboratories have had to collect this mountain of evidence since day one and keep their own records. You may not have been aware of that, but they only have to keep them for 5 years. So we will probably not know all that has happened if we ever got to release date, because they only had to keep them for 5 years. So when the Home Office replies to FOIs with information not held, that's simply not true. It is held, it's just buried, not centralised, and shielded from public eyes in the hands of the establishment. And this is the critical point of my report and talk. To give you the most accurate answer to the question, what is the problem? We have to look at the difference between a statutory power, what the law says, and administrative interpretation, how the Home Office chooses to apply it. So here is the confirmation of how Section 24 could legally prevent my workarounds and how my report argues against that prevention using their own efforts against them. So the legal block, Section 24, makes it a criminal offence for a Home Office official to disclose information that they obtained in the exercise of their functions if they have reasonable grounds for believing it was given in confidence. If ever that's a swerving statement, that's it. The government's current stance, though, has been that for decades, the Home Office has interpreted almost everything submitted by a lab as being given in confidence. And we all know this, we've seen this. So this acts as an absolute legal bar. However, the held argument As noted in my report, the Home Office often uses Section 24 to claim that they can't even admit that they hold certain data because the act of disclosure would be a crime. In short, the ASPIS text promotes structured openness, but its implementation is constrained by outdated secrecy rules and selective presentation. This leads to accusations of bias that favour the industry over robust, independent, public and parliamentary challenge. Ongoing calls for reform persist, but so far that has been elusive, and I'll detail that a bit later. But this is not just legal wording or a theory. The Home Office does hold detailed information, and it also releases it when the request is narrow, high profile, or comes under pressure. And I'm going to share 6 examples which prove this point, which shows that it's not the absolute bar that they say it is. So this pattern of information not held or blanket Section 24 refusals is not absolute. And the people who are doing this are the Home Office. This is not something that we can ignore. We need to understand that. So let's start with the 6 examples. Let's start with number 1, the MBR acre inspection reports. These were done by Tom Harris. He made targeted requests for one establishment's inspection reports, and it produced phased releases of redacted PDFs covering 2018 to 2020 unannounced visits, including the uncovered asbestos in the old pig pen roofs that that's Tanya Wilson and I, spotted in the 2018 document. No not held refusal was used. So one of the outcomes was our report to every MP and the Home Secretary in January 22 resulted in shipments of puppies being paused for weeks, and the local district council, that's Huntingdon District Council, having to sign off the old pig pens as safe with the blue asbestos. One of our team, actually, as soon as we spotted this, popped into the archives in the Huntingdon District Council offices and picked up a copy of the blue asbestos leaflet. So you can see how valuable these pieces of work are. The second one is the Wickham Laboratories Botox case. This was in 2010 and 2012 and actually resulted in a judicial review. Advocacy and court pressure forced the release of 2010 inspection reports that showed suffering and license breaches. The Home Office even accepted its enforcement duties in open court. Yet similar broader requests under FOI on Botox testing were routinely blocked. It's important to note that even by this time, Allergan, the makers of Botox, had already created the in vitro replacement batch safety test in America, and it had reached regulatory standard. So there's no need for anybody to even be using it. And without knowing this, we wouldn't have seen this piece of work shown. Then there was the Section 24 consultation results. Thousands of us between 2014 and 2015 were calling for the repeal or narrowing of Section 24. Ministers at the time promised swift action. This, remember, was the coalition government. That's the Lib Dems and the Tories. You notice I'm going to be saying this all the way through this. I'm not going to hesitate on this. Okay, so they promised swift action in Parliament, but it was never published, and there's still no reform now. This one, I think, will be of particular interest to advocates listening. Newcastle University project licenses. There was an FOI tribunal in 2012 and 2013. It's a good job. Some of us are researchers, isn't it, really? A tribunal ruled that Section 24 did not prevent release of the university's own project licenses. so partial disclosure occurred. Yet identical requests for other universities were still refused as not held. So can you see there's a pattern emerging here? Now, one of our researchers, Georgina Rednall, she did a massive batch to universities across the UK, over 100. Every single AWEB, that's the Animal Welfare Ethics Research Board, and their inspections showed that we could get redacted minutes and guidance. In fact, she got so much from Manchester, I think she nearly laid down for a week because there was so much to read. So the same information was requested nationally, but it was almost always refused as not held. So here's already a path that we can go through. And then there's this one. Remember, the House of Lords put in the Secrecy Act. Well, they had a debate on this on the 24th of October 2011, and they challenged the secrecy clause and called for alignment with the EU directive. And the government acknowledged the need for change, but then only delivered the NTS, which you all go mad about when they come out because they don't tell you very much and they show you that the numbers are ridiculous. And these cases show the truth. The data exists, the Home Office holds or can access it. You can get it from some, if not all, of the universities if you are clever about how you ask the question. And selective release happens when they choose. The rest of the time, it's hidden. So that's not a wall. It is a barrier, but it's not a wall. It's an administrative choice. And that's exactly the transparency gap that my report and implementation brief are designed to close. So when they want to, they can and do release information, which raises the obvious question, why does this secrecy persist almost everywhere? So I'm just going to stop there and just give people a minute or two to see if they want to say anything. No? Yes? Okay. So why does the problem exist? Well, I've come up with 10 reasons why this problem exists, and I have made sure that I have referenced them mostly back to how Parliament and MPs act. So let's start with the first one, what I think is the most important one. There has never been a mandated by government scientific hearing on the role of animals in science in living memory. That's really serious, I think, that we have adopted something from 1947, post-war, and we've never had a scientific hearing. There has been one select committee on the role of animals in science, and that was in 2001, 2002 in the House of Lords. There has been none from 1986 in the House of Commons, none. A key speaker to the one in 2001, 2002 was Dr Andre Menache before his Greenhill Vet days. In 2006, during the passage of the Animal Welfare Act, the animals in scientific research were deliberately carved out from standard protections. Why? Because the industry demanded it and the government caved. The animal welfare in DEFRA actively supported this exclusion. That was Ben Bradshaw. He argued it was necessary to legitimise necessary research, claiming that including laboratory animals under the Animal Welfare Act duty of care would make most experiments illegal since they inherently caused pain, suffering or distress. No mention of whether they were of any use, just that. And then here's a further outrage. This created a massive loophole which still exists, even under the Animal Welfare Act of 2022. Section 58 explicitly states what happens under ASPA stays under ASPA. So no standard welfare laws apply, no easy external oversight, Animals in laboratories, millions of them, are treated as disposable tools. You all know this. Exempt from even the light protections every pet or farm animal gets. The government insisted ASPA's rigorous framework was enough, but it's a smokescreen to avoid dual regulation conflicts and let industry operate in shadows. Critics call it a legal black hole for suffering. Yeah, it is. And then there's this lovely phrases that they come up with, the gold standard of 3Rs, or the world leading status of UK regulation. If I could have a drink for every time I've heard those, I would never stand up sober. Official bodies, Home Office, NC3Rs, and government statements frequently describe the UK's framework as a global benchmark for humane, rigorous, and transparent animal research. And the 3Rs are their ethical cornerstone. They celebrate annual statistics releases and strategies. Yet my report shows that proof of effective 3R applications, detailed trends, rehoming success, specific refinements tried and why they failed and succeeded, breaches, remain almost entirely undisclosed. This makes bold claims of rigorous enforcement and continuous progress rest on self-reported, aggregated and internal data, turning the gold standard into an assertion rather than a demonstrated fact. No MP would be able to answer that if you asked them that. They would be able to provide no evidence. Then we have the government and regulator claims of openness and transparency. So the Home Office, in its statistics publications and policy announcements, portray the UK as exemplifying openness. They contrast this with less transparent systems elsewhere and tie it to public trust and accountability. We are beyond the era of trust across the board, not just in we are beyond that. We all want to see the evidence now. That's the fact. We do. Recent strategies have emphasized partnering for alternatives. My findings reveal this is selective. The vast bulk of collected data stays hidden. And even when anonymization could safely release aggregates and trends without legal breach, they so far have failed to do this. Polls and statements from even pro-research groups stress that public acceptance hinges on visible 3Rs implementation. The 2014 Concordat on Openness, celebrated by their favourite lobbyists, actually pledged proactive communication to build trust. I don't think any of us would say we've seen that. By keeping detailed evidence of avoidable suffering, non-compliances, and slow 3Rs uptake secret, the system has risked fueling distrust. Partial disclosures don't match public expectations, and my report shows how this opacity hides issues that, if transparent, would justify public skepticism. International comparisons and leadership pretensions. Well, the UK positions itself as a leader in 3Rs and humane science. Yet my report highlights workable international models that are voluntary. Switzerland's STAR, which is a voluntary sector-led openness, and Belgium's agreements publish much more without compromising safety or intellectual property right. Intellectual property right is a big thing in this sector. They so need that protected. That's so important to them. Well, the good news is my workarounds deal with that, and they deal with it effectively. They demonstrate that greater transparency is feasible, beneficial, and is contrary to UK reluctance. And none of them, including Switzerland and Belgium, actually provide anything sufficient to verify the scientific value of adopting the 3Rs as a national process. So here we are. Everybody's being funded. It's all 3Rs. We've even got a centre for it. And we haven't got a clue whether it works or not. Good this, isn't it? You know. Self-regulation and harm benefit. These are the things that we now have. This is the operator self-reporting. The ASPA system relies on internal ethics reviews. Licensing and inspections come at a very light touch to ensure harm is justified and minimised. And the regulators claim it's robust oversight. Without MP and public access to granular data on severity outcome, breaches, or even the 3R application per project, independent verification is impossible. It exposes a reliance on closed-door assurances rather than open evidence. In essence, my report doesn't attack the 3R principles. I don't support them, but I don't attack them in this report either. And it doesn't attack the need for research. What it shows, though, is how secrecy undermines the credibility and the system's moral and scientific legitimacy. It isn't a practical flaw. It creates a contradiction to the claims of progress. So the solutions I propose make the persistence of the gap look like a policy choice. It's hypocrisy, really. It's hypocrisy across government, regulators, funders, and the research sector. And the FOIs we have been doing over the last few years actually demonstrate that. The fact that I could get them to admit in 2023, and I asked the Medical Research Council, I asked the Home Office, I asked UCRI the same question. Please, can you share with me the information that tells me the process of animal testing has been scientifically validated? And the answer is they couldn't. There isn't, and there never has been. I did get a lecture, a long one. I did go and have a look at this. This is custom and practice, but that's not the same, is it? That is not. It has been scientifically validated. And that's the first time they admitted it. In the same year, Charles Watling MP, who read my FOI, bless him, asked the question about the UK mandate for medical research. And they had to cough up. They had to tell the truth. There is no mandate in the UK to use animals for medical research. So you can see there is a big issue about the ASPA and about how it's applied and about how it's being kept a big secret from all of us. So I did call this the failure of leadership, this section of UK government since 2012. And then I just thought, I'm just going to remove since 2012 and just say the failure of leadership of UK governments, because that's the truth of it. The report that I've done exposes the UK's glaring failure to provide meaningful public access to the 38 reportable areas under the Animal Procedures Act. I don't think anybody's bothered to even list them before. So what will it do? Well, it will outline straightforward lawful workarounds, such as anonymised summaries, and I'll explain why they have to be anonymised. So it could say instead, establishment A, so you wouldn't know who it is, X% severe procedures, Y% rehomed. Wouldn't that be interesting to know for all our universities? That would be really interesting. We may not know which universities because they're covered by the Data Protection Act, but the truth is that only applies to humans. It doesn't apply to animals and their welfare. That's the key to this. It would expand the non-technical summaries and also the redacted reports. So drawing on proven voluntary models from Switzerland and Belgium, particularly Flanders and New Zealand, the report condemns the political and cultural barriers that keep this data set hidden. All of them are insufficient to claim to be world leading. I think this delay is nothing short of shameful. A couple of decades of government foot dragging that prioritises industry secrecy over ethical accountability, animal welfare, and public scrutiny. If I was an MP, I would be asking these questions day in, day out. You can't possibly be saying this is okay when you haven't got a clue. So despite the feasibility since the 2012 EU directive, successive administrations have squandered the opportunity and leaving transparency reforms in limbo. So here's a critique of the historical failures. Section 24, it's a deliberate shield for secrecy. It's been ignored for 12 years. It's got a criminal blanket ban on disclosing confidential data, but it's an outdated relic and it conflicts with modern freedom of information principles and the directive's transparency ethos. Now, you might think that since we've left the EU, they don't apply. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. The 2014 Home Office consultation exposed its flaws, and they could have repealed it with safeguards for people, places, and intellectual property rights, but no response was ever published. By 2026, FOI requests and parliamentary queries reveal endless active reviews, and there's been zero progress. It's a blatant stall tactic. It's known everywhere. Even in 2025, with this new strategy, the Replacing Animals in Science, it's got a longer title than it's actually got work. It sidesteps the repeal and it perpetuates the opacity, despite the fact that my report proves that anonymisation renders it unnecessary to repeal it. I decided that it would take too long, we'd just work around it. So they don't require new primary legislation or the repeal of Section 24. They rely on the Home Office and the establishments adopting a narrow interpretation of given in confidence. And they've already pushed the door open with those 6 examples that I've given you, but there's loads more. They can be implemented via guidance and license forms without breaking the current rules. This proves that interpretation is accepted. So they've hidden behind voluntary half measures like the Concord Act, which allows organisations to self-report but provide no granular detail. You can't even know whether the 3Rs projects they're actually engaged in at University X have actually produced any real refinements. How can we not know this after 40 years? How can we not know this? The 2025 strategy promises short wins, ending skin, eye irritation tests. Well, the bad news is everything in basket 1 was already obsolete before they announced their baskets. They've been shot a long time ago. But it ignores the broader discovery science where most animals suffer. So we decry it as a list of aspirations with no enforceable milestones. Now, I know that they're working really hard, but we're 2.5 years in now, and they promised this in 2024. And with £75 million pledged for alternatives, the focus on regulatory testing, which is only 10 to 15% of all animal experiments. Let's remember that. It feels like window dressing, delaying true phase-outs while technology like AI, organ-on-a-chips, organoids have advanced under their noses. Bioscience sectors wield outsized influence. They lobby against per-establishment reporting to protect their intellectual property and to avoid jigsaw identification. So I'm going to explain to you what jigsaw identification is, okay? So it's basically, I do a bit of work and I find a little bit of information. Alan does a bit of work and he finds a bit of information. Nikki does a bit of work and she finds, and we put it together and we come up with abracadabra, it's this place. But actually, if you use my workaround, you can never find that because I am using anonymization, and the anonymization techniques I'm using are already used by the Home Office. And they're also the standard that the Information Commissioner's Office says has to exist. So I'm not doing anything that I'm doing myself. I am using the standards that are already in place. So we're not world leading in the change, but we could be, because the real revolution is the rise in convergent science. And convergent science is biology, technology, mathematics, engineering, physics, somebody who can put together business change, somebody who can read the data. That's convergent science. That started in 2008 at MIT. And one of the most important examples of that, of course, is organ on a chip. That's not part of Big Pharma. That came out. It's a public-private partnership at the Weiss Institute, run by Emulate, which is a business setup, and it's everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And we could have had lots of this because we're very good in this country at inventing stuff. And yet we have hung on to the status quo as if our lives depend on it. Our livelihoods might have done, the mortgage pit, but the rest, not good for us at all. So it's not about hiding the data. This echoes broader criticisms of the UK secrecy culture. Delaying reports, the 2025 biodiversity assessment was suppressed for being too negative. And currently they're using secondary legislation to curb protests, like that's going to shut us up. The result is that public trust has eroded further, much further than they anticipated, I think. And I think they have mistaken the quality and the level of the people who are involved in opposing the use of animals in science. We are not a few thousand, we are not even a few 100,000. We are now in the low millions. And that's a significant advance for us. And I want to reassure you that actually that's a big change. That means that political parties like the Green Party will make pledges because actually not only do they think it's a good idea, but because it will bring in the votes too. And so far we've been ignored in this. So what happens next? Well, we get bureaucratic excuses. And of course, there's no breakthroughs and it reeks of complacency, but it just takes the will. And what we have done is we've made sure this report went out to all MPs as best we could. And we set ourselves a target of 1 in 8 MPs. Well, today we are at the stage where 1 in 4 of them have this, which is amazing. And I have nothing but admiration and respect for our campaign people who are part FEAT, part campaign to ban animal testing. They have done this. They have picked it up and they've sent it out. It's gone to the really important people in the House of Lords who have spoken about how they oppose this. And I have had conversations with them. They've phoned me up and spoken to me. So I know that this is meeting something that should have been put into place as part of the strategy this current government is attempting to sort out. We also have sent it to all the welfare organisations of the political parties because they have got a history of supporting them, and it wouldn't matter what backgrounds they are, they have been staunch. We've sent them to the All Parliamentary Group as well. We've also sent them to some key campaign groups like Animal Free Research, Replacing Animal. We've done that out of courtesy because we know that they are fighting hard to try and stop this as much as we are. So everybody who I can give it to has had it. And if I can't do it, there have been hundreds of people who have said, we spoken to our MPs, we're talking about it, we're giving it out, and I think it's been fantastic to see the response. So this wall of secrecy shames everything that we in the UK stand for. Parliament passed the ASPA to protect animals and uphold ethical science, yet it must be implemented openly and fairly. 40 years this has been. The public must see it, they must be able to question it, and they must be able to hold it accountable. They don't need to see everything. They don't need to see things that are covered by the Data Protection Act. But that's not everything. The animal welfare and the animal outcomes are not covered by this. That only applies to humans. So this is how we try to ensure real welfare and ethics. Failure isn't just unethical, it's not legal. Rule of law demands visible, changeable laws. That's how our democracy works. FOI, open government pledges, parliamentary oversight all demand visibility into licensing, suffering and enforcement. And for us who are opposing animal research, we deserve the same legal principles. Exceptions like Section 24 or GDPR are narrow, not blackout blankets. Anonymised sharing delivers scrutiny without harm, and anything less betrays our values and violates the spirit of democratic accountability. So I'm just going to stop there now because I've spoken for quite a long time. Do you want to say anything, or are you all just sitting there thinking, what's she going on about?
If there is anybody that would like to pose any questions at this point, feel free to do so. You can either put your hand up or just unmute yourself and ask. Or alternatively, you can gather your thoughts and save your questions and inquiries for the end.
Or pop something in the chat.
Or drop something in the chat, yes.
Okay, you want me to keep going?
Can I ask a question, Linda? Sorry, I was delayed there trying to get myself off mute. It might be a bit sort of hypothetical. Do you think in this country that corporate organisations are just really bad with big data? And I know you love big data, and I quite like it too. But obviously, I've seen the inside of it from the NHS and know how terrible they are at collecting it because their systems are so rubbish, and it's always wrong. So do you think there's an element of not wanting to expose that side of things, or do you think that they think it's all their systems are great and it would be? I don't know. Do you know where I'm going with this?
I do.
Thank you.
So I can answer that. Okay.
Thank you.
So I think in terms of big data, this is very easy for me to answer. I'm a technologist and a mathematician, and I was a teacher, as you know. So for me, there are a number of things on this. Commercially, those who handle big data are excellent at it because that's how their business is driven forward. That's how it works. For industry, as a standard, they already have that. They know how to operate it. They know how to manage it. When you move into the public sector, it's something that was bolted on to an existing structure, which, like the NHS, which is a very old institution by comparison with some of the businesses who are running with big data as their key tools to progress and make money. For us, what we're talking about in places like the NHS and also in the research community is that it becomes a small part of a much bigger picture, and it tends to be hived off into a department which I think is like the IT department. You know, that's not how business works. That's just not how business works. It integrates all of that. It used to be how it works, but it isn't now. And I think for institutions like universities, it's even more of a problem because some of them are really good at applying data in specific projects, particularly if they work in things like the Horizon project in Europe. They have to be able to use that. I used to work in quite a lot of European projects when I was doing coding for kids, and we had to work on big data because we were working across many countries with many kids or many grown-ups. Had to learn to do it. This is not the case. So I could have some sympathy, but this is a very narrow band of data that they're collecting. This is about a cycle of an animal from birth to shocking death and all the things that happen in between. And the other part is about a project. And if they've put a project plan together, and I've only seen one project plan that I managed to get, which was the Charles River one, the Carbodox one, which they put up on the website by mistake. So I just downloaded the lot to have a look at it. Jesus, I mean, really, I wouldn't have given them a penny, to be honest, if they wrote me a project plan like that. I'd have said, no, I don't think so. It seems to me that this is a missed opportunity, that, and maybe as an outcome of me having this conversation with you guys tonight, somebody will come up with how to do a really good project plan that covers things like intellectual property, how to manage the resources, what will drive the project. Pandora Pound did a brilliant article about the use of statistics and about how they're applied. And I think she was the closest that came to explaining how the university-based research industry could actually apply commercial data. I think that's it. The only thing I would say is it's a bit suspect, really, isn't it? Because when they needed to use big data to do the COVID vaccines, they got off their backsides and they used it. And they used it so they could make a lot of money and they could deliver a lot of vaccines. And they used it across continents, across all political boundaries, and they managed to put together this product. And whatever we think of it, they did this. Okay, so I think this is about will, isn't it? Really, I think that's it. Does that help?
Yes, it does. And I don't want anyone to think I was defending them in any way at all.
No.
It was just, I know the lengths that we used to go to in the NHS to avoid data. FOIs would throw us into an absolute frenzy because we knew the data was going to be wrong, but it had to be pulled from the system. It was no use having a separate spreadsheet. So, I wasn't defending them in any way. I was just curious. Thank you, Linda. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. So I'm just going to finish off this little bit and I'm going to just talk about how we fix this now, I think, because I think this is quite important. So if you haven't seen my report, you don't need to for this particular talk. It's actually on our website and it's completely downloadable. The implementation brief is downloadable. The summary is downloadable. And the little chart at the end, which actually matches up every single workaround and which anonymization technique you should use, that all of that is there. So it's completely free. So that'll cause a riot for a start because there's no money attached to it. So that changes the dynamic, because it seems to me in this arena where the research is that if you haven't got a price tag on it, it's not of any value. Yes, it is. Okay, so this is the document. Okay, I had it properly published, and Scribes of Hull, who live down the road from MBR, did this for me. Magic. And what they did was they pulled together my notes, and what I've done is I've described here, just inside the page, the 3 levels of reporting that currently exist. And that's really important. Very simple. You can understand that. Then if I go to the back, what I'm going to show you is all the sources that I use, okay, are all government sources. So they can't say you've asked Cruelty Free International, you've asked X, Y, or Z, because they will, that. So I've used their sources, and that puts them on the spot, because everything I'm saying in here is from here. That's important. Then what I did was, because obviously this is important for them, I just turned to page 5. I've explained why it's essential. So it's nice and simple. It does sort of a key point on each of the areas, and it explains it in layman's terms. And I think that's really important when we stick this in front of MPs, that they can read this, they can make sense of it. I think that's really important. At the back, I put a summary, and the summary basically says what it will achieve. So if they want to put it into their strategy in their own words, and I'm not having a problem about that, and if they don't want to acknowledge that they got it from me, I'm fine about that too. So what I'm quite keen on is that they actually use it. So this explains exactly what this is about. Then the other thing that I did was, for universities, I wanted to help them to get there. So I put an establishment checklist. And what we're going to do with this as a group of researchers is we're going to take this checklist out and we're going to create a university's version of the transparency gap so they can actually implement it. And some of the universities will. Like when we FOI'd them to ask them if they were going to phase out, Portsmouth told us they were going to stop using mammals. They volunteered that information quite openly. So we're going to send this new version of this to the universities and say, have a go at this. Why not? And then the other thing that we did, because we know that there's going to be pushback, you know that. So I made sure it was in colour so they couldn't miss it. So it says all the things that they're going to grumble about, like intellectual property, physical security of the facilities, legal barriers, potential for public misinterpretation. I'm using all their own words, by the way, and what they're going to say about harassment. So I've put that in colour so they can't miss it. And then what I did was I answered those questions, because I think that's quite important, really. So I've got 3 pages of refuting everything that they're going to moan about. And actually, I've said how to anonymise it, and the standards are all the Information Commissioner's Office standards. That's important too. And then the workarounds themselves are very simple. I've taken them apart and I've done them like this. So basically what you've got is, you've got what the workaround is on the area. So if it says welfare minimisation, it says what the example is, what you need it for, the reason for it, and what the workaround is. And I thought that would be enough. I thought that would get them going. So I sent those out. We had 150 of those go out. And then I got a call back saying, well, actually, do we think we need to give them a how to implement it as well? And I'm thinking, you're kidding me, aren't you? You know, well, okay. So I did this. There we go. So this way round. Okay, so I've written an implementation brief. And basically what it does is it explains how to put this into action. And this is just 9 pages. So you would think, blimey, that can't be difficult then. Well, it isn't. No, no, it isn't. So because they like their project plans, I've done them a project plan. And you'll be able to see this for yourself. Project plan, okay. Using all the right technical words and in the right order. I've also put together all the key anonymisation techniques, and I'm going to explain about 2 of them for you because I think that's important. And at the back, I've written a complete list of each of the workarounds and which anonymisation technique to use. Now, in order to meet the standards, apart from doing this different types of anonymisation techniques, there are 2 that are really important. One is called the K anonymity test. You have to learn to say that. And the other one is called the motivated intruder test. So the K anonymity test actually says, You know, if I'm a small lab and I don't want to be identified, or I'm a small breeding site and I don't want to be identified, how can I do that? And so you set a technique up which runs it through this K anonymity test. You band the information, you portray it as a trend, you actually put it together perhaps. So if I just say NBR acres with the Mary Lyon site, so they use different animals, God forbid, but they do, and you could put them together and you could talk about them and you would get information. Now, some of you would say, well, I would like to know, I would really like to know whether NBR is doing. You can't know that. You can't know that. You can't know that because it's covered by law, and it covers it because that's the way it's been set up. But what you can know is what they're doing. And I think that is really, really important. So that's one. Now, the second one is something called the motivated intruder test. Great, isn't it? See, lots of smiles at this one. Now, the motivated intruder test is where if you're super nosy, that's me, super nosy. I am super nosy. I have to say, I think all the researchers I work with, super nosy too. You can't ever find out who they are. Now, that is a standard that is set by law. It's also a standard that's been updated by the Information Commissioner's Office in 2025. And I've spent time understanding this and checking this out and making sure that, so all my workarounds comply. I don't break any of that, they comply. But what they would give us is they would give us fixes in percentages. We could have all of the 38 reported on. Now that's transformational because it would allow us to do things like, can we actually see what real rehoming looks like in this sector? Can we actually look at the 3 R's, and is replacement the number one priority, as it was when Burke and the other one, Russell, when he wrote it, that was their priority. That's all been inverted now. So we would get an opportunity, and the MPs would get an opportunity to be able to check the progress. We would also be able to see trends. We only see numbers at the moment, and they're blunt, and we see perhaps occasionally the figures about which species are actually used. I don't think that's very accurate, to be quite honest. I think that's a best guess. I do. So we need to know this. We absolutely need to know this. And I would say that if you are a motivated intruder, I can see you all smiling. You all love this bit. You probably won't like this very much, but you probably will appreciate that if we could have 38 reportable areas that we could actually look at that gave us information about whether this is actually progressing or not. And nobody knows this. I mean, we just don't know this. And because the NTSs are all word-based, and because they're trying to find some mechanism where they can do word searches, how do you do word searches on such disparate things? I mean, you can chuck it in the AI, but you know, if you think it's not going to have a hallucination before it sees it, it will do. It certainly will. So in plain English, what that actually means is the data is grouped effectively so that no single lab or person stands out in the crowd, but they are all included. And I think that is really important. So I'm going to come to the end of what I'm going to say now, which is protecting human rights is vital. Protecting the welfare of the animals in science is ultimately the most important, because after all, they have no choice. It's a massive step forward to do this. I've been really grateful that people have put so much into making sure this is shared. I have done as much as I possibly can now on it as a document, and it's now up to everybody to try and get this in front of their MPs. And we tried it out. We have tried this out. We actually had a member of the campaign group who had one of those standard replies back from their MP, you know, we love this, we're going to phase it out, we're going to do wonderful things, and it's all perfect. And they challenged it today for the first time. And it's empowering to do this. It's really empowering, because you can say to the MP, how do you know this? Where are you getting the data from? I can't see it. Where can you show me the data? Now that changes the responses that you're going to get. Now you imagine there are 650 of them. If 650 of them get these sorts of, well, actually, how do you know? How can you tell? We know that if you anonymize this, you could have this data. Have you thought about doing it? So this provokes a different reaction now, doesn't it? It changes how people are able to operate as activists in terms of getting information. One of the things that is very noticeable in the last few years is how much of a range of activism is going on. It's a much bigger spread. We're much more fortunate, and we're also much worse off because we've got a whole range of social media tools to work with. We also have the rise of AI, and we use AI in our research work, and our team is trained to be able to use more than one AI tool. We all have AI tools in our bag now. So that changes how we operate. I use 4, and I think the rest of the team use 3, and we all use different ones, and we put it together. This puts us into a different category of activity. It enables us to bring together very quickly documents that are already published by the government, review them, and look at them and challenge them. So I think for us, this document, the transparency gap and the implementation brief, is a really good little lever to be able to encourage more people to participate in stopping this. So my last words are really, it provides the legal and technical roadmap to be able to work around the lack of reporting that we currently have. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. That was incredibly informative. Vast amounts of information to take in there. Would anybody like to pose any questions to Linda based on all of the things that you've heard? There must be some things in there that you'd like to discuss, maybe?
I've got one. So obviously you want everyone to take this to their MPs. Is there anything else that you'd like everyone to be doing in relation to this?
Okay, so if you message me, I will send you a copy of the documents to send, and I've even drafted a constituency letter for you, which I will send you as a Word document so you can personalise it. And that's been really successful. I think it's really important that you add your own touch. So I've done that piece of work. On the back of this, we did a separate piece of work, Tanya and I. We looked at the progress of the strategy that the government's put together, and it's quite clear it's slow. So one of the things we have done is we've written another letter which can go to MPs, space them out. Don't send them all in one go because they'll just lie down in a dark room and not get up again. This one actually says you can accelerate this progress, and you can accelerate this progress on these 3 areas. It's all about training, because it's not about the science. You need to understand the science is here. It sits on the shelf. We're even at the stage where we're versioning in vitro methods. Some of them have been here for 20 years. So What we need to do is we need to reduce the expertise deficit that we've got. And what I've done is I've put a pile of metrics which says, instead of just training your PhD and your mid-career researchers, let's put some of the early years researchers in, you know, like the undergraduates. Let's get your MHRA. Wouldn't that be great? Let's train them as well. And let's do it this year. So I've put a pile of metrics in and said, here you go, let's have a go at this. And 3 areas, not gone mad. I would love to do more, but, you know, I accept that they're a bit slow. So 3 areas, pile of metrics and another letter. So you can have those as well. And you just need to message me and I'll send you that as well. On top of that, we're doing another piece of work, as you can imagine. We're doing something which I've already just said is called the expertise deficit. What it also is done, I've written a report on that. You can have that to have a people out, but it's not finished yet. It has gone out, but it's not finished yet. It basically will challenge the Act itself. It will, because it says quite clearly in Section 2A, you should always be using replacements. So we are using the expertise deficit. Tanya and I are working on this like day and night at the moment to show that they can't put the replacement in because they don't know what it is. So there you go. And having proved that the process of animal testing has never been scientifically validated, it makes it even worse, I think. So that's our next thing. It feels endless, doesn't it, really? So there you go. That help?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Linda.
Is there anything else that anybody else would like to put forward to Linda while we have her with us?
Silence.
Silence, yeah.
Another one.
Oh, well then, Amy has another question for you.
Sheila, are you waving at me?
Oh, sorry.
I don't know. Sheila, are you waving at me?
I was
In the chat.
kind of putting my hand up, but you go ahead, Amy, and I'll.
No, you go. Your
right.
turn.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what you've done, Linda. I mean, I'm in total awe of the work that you do. Really incredible. So thank you for all that you do. I must admit that recently I haven't been keeping up with the campaign Facebook group. It is difficult to keep up because there's so many posts, but I do need to catch up. And I haven't sent it to my MP yet because I've been focusing on other things. But I now want to put aside some time for that. But I think what I really want to do is, what I think I need to do is to actually arrange a meeting with him. I don't know if other people have done that. I know on other issues, certainly in the group that I'm in, Dorset Animal Action, other people have been going to talk to their MPs, and that's been quite effective. So
yeah, I think it's a really good idea to do that.
Because you know he
relationships.
I mean, he takes forever to reply.
Yeah.
Then when he replies, of course, you don't see the email that you sent in their reply. So you're thinking, oh God, what is he actually replying to? And then I must admit, I lose track. I think, yeah, to be fair, well, that's another issue. I think I've got my...
You don't need to go very often.
I've got my finger in too many pies. I think I need to...
Just go and see him once. I think it's really important to do that.
That's what I want to do. But sorry, just to get to my real question is, I mean, obviously we're, you know, all of us are animal rights campaigners, activists, whatever you want to call yourselves. But, you know, it feels to me like, well, we know people don't care. People don't give a damn about non-human animals. And, you know, I imagine the majority of MPs just think, well, this isn't important because it's just about animals. But are we, have other people been pushing, and I'm sorry, I also haven't read your cover letter yet that you sent me. I'm wondering about pushing the fact that we should be pushing more on the fact that it's not providing us with cures, certainly in medical research, that animal testing is not helping to progress. It's not benefiting human health. So what, I mean, I just wondered if you could comment on that in terms
Okay,
of
couple of things
stressing
then.
why to MPs and other politicians why we need to do this.
Okay, so if you're an MP, you have thousands of constituents who have thousands of issues and thousands of problems. So you're never going to become experienced at all of this. And you have to rely on your prior experience. My MP was in the armed forces. So quite a lot of his questions that he brings up and the areas that are on defence, I understand that. However, I asked him as a human being if he would just give me 5 minutes on this, and I made sure that the questions I asked him were all about the benefits of moving to this, because I realized that's what he is like. So find out what floats your MP's boat, I would say. Then the second thing is don't overload him or her with loads and loads of stuff. I asked mine to do a number of things, and everything I've asked him to do, he has done. Now, you might say, well, that you're very persuasive, but he didn't know me from Adam. He's a new MP and he doesn't know me from Adam. So I was very careful to make sure that he would personally benefit as an MP from what I asked him to do, because I think that's really important. You have to work with the person you've got. The person we had as an MP before didn't engage at all. So I understand that that's very difficult, but that doesn't stop you. I've put together something called a Chamber of Commerce action plan. Now, every town has got a Chamber of Commerce. So there's nothing to stop you personally speaking to a Chamber of Commerce person and saying, look, here's a plan which would bring in business to they're all interested in that immediately. So you see, it's all about finding the hooks. If you get stuck, you can always send me a message. I don't mind. I get loads and loads and loads. I probably won't pick the phone up because otherwise I'd never be off it, but you can message me and I'm generally very responsive. I really miss stuff. I try to keep on top of that. And what you will find is that there will be key things that they will pick up. And it could be, for example, that somebody's got a member of their family who's got prostate cancer. You could find somebody who's got a child who is struggling to get medication. So there's all sorts of stuff that you can pick up, that you can work from and you can use. We have to treat this stuff, not all of our activism, but this stuff as business. If you treat it as business, it changes the dynamic. What I've done today is an act of business change, and I've done it because I'm experienced in that. But it doesn't mean you all can't use it, because all I've done is say, this is how it works. Here it is. I've made sure it's absolutely watertight. Andre endorses it, and he's a tough boss to work for. Let me tell you, the first one I sent in, I had so many red lines through it. If I didn't know him very well, I would have left at that stage. But he said, this is your work, you have to own it. So I've owned it and I've finished it and I've made it right. And he says to me, yeah, hands up, Andre. So he's saying to me, you can add my email address to every letter that goes out to every MP on this, because I'm happy to speak about it. Now, for me, you know, this is somebody with a really big reputation. And there's me. And I think, okay, I'm right. So I think for you, Sheila, you should definitely find out what floats your MP boat. It won't be everything, you won't, but even an inroad will change that for you. I'm sure of it. It will. If they're absolutely hopeless, and unfortunately there are those, you know, then it could be the Chamber of Commerce directly would be useful. I also find you can speak in the local paper, you know, the comments. I comment all the time. Bet they think, bloody woman. But I just comment all the time, and I try to be rational about it, and I try not not to let the passion override it. It's very difficult. Like yesterday, the rescue of the dogs, we were all, of course we were, but you know, we have to see the picture as well, which is this has to stop. This does have to stop. Why would biology be in a position where it's behaving like this when we've got physics and technology and engineering and maths doing all this spectacular stuff, and biology's doing this? I mean, it's nuts. So does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Linda. Your your experience and your expertise is just invaluable. I did actually put a personal spin in the last email I sent him, but I think I may have overwhelmed him with too much, and then I just got a kind of off pat reply. So yeah, it's on my list. It's a priority now, really, to get a meeting with him, and I will report back. But yes, and also thank you. You do always reply to messages very promptly, and I'm grateful for that. So
Welcome.
I'll try and get organised with that in the coming days. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. Might be important, might be nothing. Where is all of your information? Where can people get all of your information from?
Okay. So everything I do is, I built a website because I couldn't keep it all on. It is all on our campaign page, and you can search our campaign page like a reference library because it goes back quite a long way, and it's got loads and loads on there. So if you just go on the search tool, you can put it in and do that.
Who is our?
Okay.
Our page, but who is our?
Yeah. Okay. Our page. Okay. Right.
Who are they?
So we can do that. I also put all the key documents on the website, and I do that for people who don't really use Facebook and do that. But if you find there's a gap and you say to me, could you, which is why there's always so many posts, because I get loads of stuff saying, can you tell me about this? And I need to have this like yesterday. And we try to do our best because we know that time pressures for you are probably really, we're mostly retired. So we've got time to do this now, and this is our full-time job doing this. So I think it's really important that we give our stuff away. So we do. And we've got guides and we've got files, all sorts. You're welcome to all of it.
And so this is on your Facebook group, and which is the name of the Facebook group is?
It's Campaign to Ban Animal Testing and Research. We did have a discussion about should it be Campaign to End, and we decided that just suggested phasing out, and we don't do phasing out. We're abolitionists in our group. We want it stopped.
I just put the link in the chat there, Alan.
Thank you.
Yes, I saw that. Thank you, Sheila. And the website is the same name, is it?
Yeah, it's called bananimaltestingandresearch.com.
Fantastic.
It's got a load of blogs on it as well. So, you know.
Somebody has asked where can we message you? So would that be through that Facebook page or
yeah,
the website?
Yeah, you can. You can either message me on Messenger. You can send me through the website. You can even drop one on the Alliance for Cruelty Free Science. We'll pick it all up between us. There are 15 of us who work. There are 6 of us who work as researchers. 3 of us up front who do the sort of public facing. Each of us has got a researcher who works for us, volunteer, all trained, by the way. All 6 of us are trained. We trained with Andre, and we work with For Life on Earth. That's Ricky and Peter and Louise Owen. Work with them. We give away their leaflets on our outreaches. We work with Safer Medicines Trust, so that's Pandora, Dr. Pandora Pound, Kathy and Rebecca Ram. And you've got Rebecca coming to speak for you soon. She's lovely. I mean, great, you know, how brilliant to have somebody like that. And it's great because, and I'm saying this because there aren't many women researchers who get that sort of like profile, and it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant. We should all, whatever your gender, you know, you should get that. And it's very male dominated at this moment. So it's brilliant, I think. And she'll do you a fab talk, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm very much sure she will. We also will have Pandora Pound at some later date
Oh,
in the year. We
yeah.
were hoping to get it for April, but unfortunately she's got other commitments. So
Yeah, she's really good, and she's fantastic on data and stats, and she cuts through the stuff. And I think the three of them did some papers on statistical analysis, which sounds like, but it wasn't. It was just fantastic, really.
we will have copies of everything that you have, just so that people know. We will connect those onto the FEAT website, and also for the April campaign, we always have a resources pack. So that will be also available through the website. It's a link that will take you through to everything, and so we will put as much information of your research and everything that we can do. We will link to you and make available wherever we possibly can, so that we can.
Okay, so one of the things I will do, I'll obviously send you the talk, and then when I take out my prompts, because obviously it says 5 minutes, take all that out. Okay, so I'll do that. But what I think I can also do for you is I will, on the website, I will actually put, friends site, and we'll put the FEAT link on there. And what I'll probably ask you to do is perhaps you could do us a wee blog that we could pop up on our website, and that would be great. And you
No,
could,
absolutely, that'd be fantastic.
okay, we can do that. We're going to put up another page very shortly. We are extremely lucky to have an author who is also an artist in residence in our campaign. She's been with us a while. She's a published author too. So we're going to be putting up her resources. And what happens is these resources are purchasable, but we don't go for donations in our campaign. We're not interested in that. Everything that she sells will go to an animal rescue. So fantastic. So we're going to put that up as well. So if you felt you could help promote that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, that sounds great. Excuse me, is there anything anybody else would like to ask?
There is something else actually I'm curious about, Linda, if you don't mind me asking. I'll let someone else go first, though. I've already asked a question. Is anyone else?
Go on then, Sheila.
Okay, so you mentioned that the number of, I'm not sure what it was. It was something in the low millions, the number of
there are
people who, what were you quantifying?
I would say they were people who are friendly to animal rights activism.
Right.
That's what I would say.
You mean, but not specifically on animal testing and research, you mean generally, or where did you get this thing? I'm just really curious. I mean, because it's very positive. So, but I just was curious about.
Obviously, as a mathematician, I can't just say things like that, can I? So we have a vegan percentage, we have the animal rights percentage, and some of that is actually the animal rights activist percentage is actually identified by the government, and I'd have to go back and search the source on that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, of course they do. Yeah, of course they do. They'll know that I'm sitting here doing this tonight for sure.
Right. So I'm being a bit naive about that. Right. Yeah. Okay.
So, like, who cares? I saw this great T-shirt that was a waspy T-shirt, and it says, "Don't piss off the pensioners. A lifetime in prison holds no problems." I thought, yeah, I recognise that at my age. Yeah. So, and I would say that we have moved from perhaps the 2000s, where we were in the low 100,000s, to, I mean, we're not talking multi-millions, but we're talking a couple of million. Now, that becomes really important as a group if you're doing voting, if you're making decisions. And it's quite pivotal at this moment. As we know, it's quite a complicated arena that our political parties are operating in. You can only promise so many things for 2030 or 2035 before people actually work out, well, that's after the next election, So there you go. I don't have to say any more, do I, on that? Get myself shot here.
I think you're referencing, you know, a few million, but realistically, I think we all are fairly confident that any person that you speak to in the street, the vast majority of people, you know, almost everybody has no time for animal vivisection.
I agree.
Most people consider it a necessary evil, and a phrase that I'm often quoted, use all the time, is the fact that what do you call a necessary evil that is no longer necessary? It's clearly just evil. We're now in a fantastic position where the science has taken over, the alternatives have taken over massively. So all our job now is basically to convince the public that these things
use the taxpayer thing as well. I think that's really important. One of the things that changed for us was when we talked about taxpayer funded experiments. We did our bus campaign a while back in London, and we put stop taxpayer funded animal experiments, and they were extremely important, and people notice that, and I know we want to stop all of them, but actually if people realize they're paying for it as well, they don't like it at all. It's changed quite a lot of things in the conversations I have when I say, well, it fails over 90% of the time, and they go, well, that's terrible, but like still. And I said, and you're paying for it, and you know what, you know, so what, I'm paying for this, you are, you know, mug. So
yeah, definitely does make a huge difference. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Could keep this going for hours and hours, but personally I can. It's been absolutely delightful having you talk for us.
thank you.
Again, your information is invaluable, and will be particularly invaluable through April. There's lots of thank yous in the chat from everybody that's here, and everyone there are a few people that have had to leave. But yes, overwhelmingly a great response from everybody, and a wonderful talk. So thank you, Linda, for being with us this evening, and thank you to everybody else that was available to come. This will be up on our YouTube channel as soon as I can get to it, so probably the day after tomorrow. So thank you once again, and thank you everybody, and we will see you next Tuesday. We have Lindsay Marshall, who will be talking for us next week, and she's another person from the scientific angle, and then we have lots of other people, activists and researchers, etc., throughout April. Thank you very, very much, and we will see you all again next Tuesday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.